Hey guys, how's it going? Capan here. Yes, it's that time again. It's time to talk about the bots. Bots are a pretty interesting thing in Hearthstone. Going back to a little bit of history, I think about a year ago, bots were pretty prevalent on ladder, pretty prevalent even in arena. And arena is a pretty interesting thing because you mostly just do arena for the fun of it. It's actually very difficult to profit gold in arena, to actually do well enough so you could consistently run it. Specifically so when it comes to a bot playing a new deck. So yeah, even those type of bots were working a year ago, but they were much more elementary. It was pretty obvious when you'd play a bot because, they would sequence their cards in a very specifically timed out fashion. 3 seconds would pass and they'd do something, 3 more seconds and they'd do something else. But at the same time, people a year ago in Hearthstone were just a lot worse at the game. Especially in arena, I feel. When it comes to constructed, there's a lot of websites out there, there's a lot of resources that try to push people's ability to play, but, it can't really improve too much more than it has because a lot of the decks that are really dominant are fairly easy to play. And, well, it just so happens that bots kind of take advantage of that. About a year ago, the infamous Sea Giant Shaman deck was very well used by bots, and back in those times, there were very few reports of like 5 or 6, maybe 7 players reaching legend with their Sea Giant Shaman bots. And this is possible because in Hearthstone, you can actually reach legend if you have a sub 50% win rate. If you just lose a whole bunch, then you win streak a whole bunch. You just have to get really, 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 really lucky and play a crap load of games, which are a few things that bots are basically capable of doing. However, in light of there being so many bots and so many people getting basically all the golden portraits, a bunch of free cards off the gold, the quests, and all the games that the bots are able to do, Blizzard decided to get rid of the bots. And their first motion to get rid of the bots was to suspend them for like 3 or 4 months. And then people were like, what, really? You're going to just suspend botted accounts? So yeah, because of the fairly negative response of the public, Blizzard upped the ante and basically removed all the wins that were botted. So people got basically their golden portraits removed. So yeah, not much has been heard of bots since, but one post popped up on Reddit. In this particular case, I'm not going to link it. On one hand, because it was removed. On the other hand, because a lot of stuff that was originally posted was basically advertising this specific bot software. And one of the claims was that this specific bot software had like 170 or 180, something like that, of its bots reaching legend rank. And this is last month, so this is for the month of September, which they estimated was basically 8% of the total players who were at Legend. Now, this claim was largely disputed because people thought there were a lot more Legend players. It only accounted for the Legends on like NA server. The claim didn't seem very verifiable, let's say. But at the same time, I would argue that there's probably more than just one bot out there. Actually, I have no idea. I never looked into that stuff. But I like to follow what's going on in the game in terms of all the aspects that are happening. So this is a pretty interesting one. And it seems that bots these days go fairly undetected because really, it takes posts like these for people to realize that there actually is a problem. And it is a subject that I talked about in the past where, if you don't know you're playing a bot, if you think you're just playing the regular game, does anyone really get hurt? Yeah, a little bit. It's not too fair for people to gain more out of the game by just running a software against you who's actually trying to do well and trying to beat everyone and trying to grind it out much more slowly. So it's not really fair. That's why you kind of have to manage that. You kind of have to get rid of it. But Blizzard in the past, especially across their other games, has been very relaxed when it comes to botting. A lot of bots just get away with it in World of Warcraft with Diablo 3, and very rarely do they get banned. In Hearthstone, it feels like there would be a bigger incentive to bot because, well, you don't lose your original investment because there is none. In Diablo and World of Warcraft, you have to pay for the account. You often have to pay for extra expansions. There's a little bit of a bill associated with running a bot, whereas in Hearthstone, you just make a free account, you run the bot, and I think the reason this field actually grows is because people just try it. They think it's cool. I think it's kind of cool, but I wouldn't try it. Probably 3 or 4 months down the line, once they get a bunch of golden portraits and a pretty nice head start for free on their account, well, they just figure if it survives like 3 or 4 months of unbanned play, well, maybe then it can just become their regular account. So it kind of, puts a little bit of a dent in Blizzard's pocketbook, where people who would otherwise want to play can circumvent having to get packs, and it also runs up the servers a little bit because these are basically mostly free to play botted accounts. So that is what's going on. It seems like bots are pretty prevalent, and they're also pretty effective. While I haven't really noticed many arena bots, in one case someone mentioned in one arena game when someone had an Argent Watcher, I believe, he realized it was a bot when it tried to constantly attack with the card and realized it couldn't. So there are a few bugs still out there. There's still a few indicators so you can actually see when you're playing a bot, but in general, there are fairly few. While these days, I'd imagine there are almost no botted arena players because it's just almost impossible to really play at a profit, as the arena push has been so big in the last year. In terms of Constructed, while Constructed has also advanced, Constructed is also a little bit harder than it was a year ago, there are still decks that are just super easy to play. Decks like Face Hunter, decks like the Mysterious Challenger, Secret Paladin. Yeah, there are some really skillful plays that you can make, but, the skill aspect rather than the mechanical play, the automatic decision making, comes into play maybe 1 in 7 games. So 6 games, the bot's going to play just as well as a normal player, and that 7th game, maybe it'll slip up a little bit, maybe it won't play as good as it could otherwise. So it just seems that there are some decks that really don't require much, and the botting thing has improved. It's just very difficult to actually realize you're playing a bot most of the time. So it clearly is much better disguised, and because the decks are still fairly easy to play, it just so happens that they're just even more effective at playing them, and yeah, they're getting legend. How about that? So all these things put together creates a system where bots will basically always exist, because players who play Hearthstone are going to try to get a little bit of an advantage. They're going to try to dabble in this kind of software because there's a lot of crossover. Bots are actually just, something you have to live with if you're a gamer. There's a lot of bots in every single game. Any chance a company or a few individuals can get to bot a certain game to gain any kind of advantage, they'll do that. They'll sell their bots. So there is always going to be a developer for this stuff. And if it's not too hard to get into, there's always going to be a market. So people are always going to get into this stuff. There's always going to be bots. And with Hearthstone, with there not being too many bans going on, and it being basically a zero risk type of system, well, they're going to be pretty prevalent. And it's actually thanks to posts like these that you can actually realize this, because they're so deceptive, they're so advanced that you don't actually know this is going on. So it is going on, and now that you know it's going on, maybe it's something you could pick up on a little bit. About a year ago in Hearthstone, bots will often have very clear plays, very deliberate plays that are basically made under parameters, and you could beat bots by first realizing it's a bot, and second, playing around these parameters. It's kind of hard to describe because I don't really know what they are, but it would be kind of like if you have 3 minions, they would play Lightning Storm, often regardless if it actually would kill them. So there's a few things like this, and it's just something that I think is important to keep in mind. So maybe, at the very least, we know what's going on, and maybe we can better detect it. And with this in mind, with this at the back of our heads when we're playing Hearthstone, and the fact that the community is starting to talk about it again, maybe we're due for another ban cycle of bots, eh, Blizzard? No? We'll see. They're never going to go away, but as long as they're kept under control pretty well, and right now they might not be, well, that's just as good as you can get it. So, gotta live with it. Bots are just nature of the games these days, but still pretty interesting to look into it, pretty interesting to see what's going on, and I hope I've kind of helped you guys understand the picture a little bit better. Hope you guys enjoy my talk, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.